What up YouTube, it's Misery Hates Company. In this video, we're looking at the best PVE hero tier list for Marvel Future Revolution. In my previous video, I did mention that I would be covering PVE and I said it was coming out the next day and it didn't. But I'm sorry for the delay, but here it is. And I was having a really hard time figuring out how I was going to make this video make the most sense. So I was going to either make it like a Special Invasion tier list and then Alliance Raid tier list and have two different categories like that. But then I was like, well, you're not factoring in like the leveling experience or regular raids or blitzes or anything else that may come to the game in the near future, or Dark Zone, which is kind of like a hybrid PvE, PvP experience. So instead, I'm going to focus on single target PvE tier list. And then I'm also going to have a second tier list for multi-target PvE. That way, no matter what you're doing, no matter what new content comes out in the game, you have an understanding of which hero is best for single target and multi-target and anything in between. And we'll actually compare the two lists and figure out who maybe is the most balanced between the two. And maybe they'll help anyone make their own decision on who they want to play in certain different categories in PvE. So without further ado, let's jump straight to the video. All right, so first things first, just for some background, I have my Star-Lord farming in the back because you should always be farming for gold. And I actually am going to be doing an updated guide on gold because there's a lot of different ways of making gold. And somebody actually just recently brought up that my previous gold farm maybe isn't as efficient as it used to be, which is correct. So the game has changed a decent bit. So we're actually going to be making a new video about that. So if you are interested in learning all the best ways of getting the best gold, make sure you subscribe to this channel because I will be making that video. No promises, but sometime soon. I think it is overdue, so I will be making that video while we have a little bit of lull in content for right now. But this video is about PvE. So the first list I want to go over is going to be the single target tier list. So the first thing you're going to note is that I have everything categorized in the same order that I had it in the previous video. That way you're not searching for different names. They're in the same exact order every single time. This is on an S to D tier, so S, A, B, C, and D. I'm not going any lower than D, but it is notable that I only will give one hero the S tier per category, and that is for both PvP, PvE, single target, multi-target, whatever it is. This is, I feel like, to truly capitalize on who is the overall best. So you might see a little bit more A's and B's because of that, but let's go ahead and jump straight into it. So Captain America, single target is just not it. And when it comes to PvE content, so I'm ranking him at rank C. It's okay. And we're going ahead on the basis that these are all, let's say 2 million power. So they're not new heroes. They're not also fully maxed out heroes, but they are balanced in terms of getting to 2 million power, because I feel like that's a decent threshold for most people nowadays. So 2 million power is the assumed power for all of these situations. Captain Marvel, I am ranking C when it comes to single target. It's not great. It's not awful. It's okay, which is why it's C. It's the middle of the road. Spider-Man is B. I feel like for single target, he actually can do pretty decent. And I did re-roll my Hydra gear set from my Iron Man 2 Hydra, anticipation for squad battles. So I do have a little bit more experience than I did previously on Spider-Man, and I would actually rank him a little bit better than Captain America, Captain Marvel, but somewhat lower than some of the other options. I don't think he's bad at it. If you have Spider-Man as your main and you have min-maxed him fully, you actually have the opportunity of re-rolling your cards to supervillain damage, which not everyone has. So if you were to min-max him like that, you could definitely bump him up in single target to maybe A, at least to the A tier. But just for balance sake and for, like I said, 2 million, I think that this is a decent grade for him compared to what some of the other ones are at. So I'm going to rate him at the B tier. Next up is Black Widow. Black Widow's single target damage is arguably almost the best. Like if I were to add plus and minuses, I would rank Black Widow A plus because she has that good a single target damage. She gets crits very easily in her toolkit, and then which means you can just focus on crit damage and just do a ton of damage. Similar to the S tier, which we'll talk about later. Next up is Iron Man. Iron Man is very, very well rounded in both PvP and PvE. I feel like him and Black Widow are literally in the same exact situation, that they are both balanced and you can use them kind of anywhere as long as you build them the right way. So I do have Iron Man ranked A as well. Moving on to Doctor Strange. I do have him at a B tier, which is a decent bit higher than I had him on my PvP tier list. So in PvE, he definitely has a place where he does somewhat okay. Like I said, better than Captain America, Captain Marvel, But I would also mention that I would add the little kind of asterisk or caveat that he does fantastic for groups in Alliance Raid. He is arguably S tier in that category, and he has very good guard damage capabilities, similar to Captain America, so in some special invasions, he does well. But overall, for terms of damage, which is what we're covering here, not necessarily all the additional special effects or guard damage or anything like that, he is overall B in my opinion. Now, Star-Lord is, in my eyes, hands down the S tier for single target damage in PvE. He has the ability, he has so many toolkits or tools in his toolkit that can just do so much damage. And if built correctly, you can dodge and do an instant crit and then do so much damage. And it's ridiculous the amount of damage you can do at a single target. I think he is truly S tier, well above anyone else in this single target category for PvE. Moving on, we have Storm. Storm is, and I think everyone knows this, is just in kind of like a tier of her own when it comes to PvE. She does shine better in multi-target, which we'll talk about here in a second, but single target, she's still very good, but just not as good as Star-Lord, again, in my opinion. My girl, Magic. Magic was my main for a long time. I was the only content creator for, I think, ever to main her for as long as I did. And yeah, she is okay at best. And after Transmute, I had high hopes that we would be able to do a lot more damage with her, and we did not. In fact, the really only good build for her is just to do a ton of like tankiness and then do kind of mediocre damage, which is for PvE not amazing. I mean, you do get some decent single attack damage out of your ultimate. So when the fight is longer, you do see her kind of climb the charts a little bit more compared to like a Star-Lord who does better in the short fights. Magic does better in the long fights. And I don't think a lot of our PvE fights, at least currently, last that long. I would add the caveat that when I was playing Magic and we had the Magneto raid, I could solo it, or the special invasion rather. I could solo it. So when everyone else died off because of all the high intensity damage, I would save my ultimate, use it in those times where I was losing too much health and I didn't have a health pot available, and I could actually finish off the fight by myself literally every single time. Now, it wasn't fully autoable, but I don't think a lot of people were autoing the Magneto fight anyway. When it got down to like so many people just taking a lot of damage, you really had to be tactful with your dodges and stuff like that. So I would add that caveat. She did very well in that fight. Last but not least, we have Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch, even without Transmute, has so many tools at her disposal. There's so many different builds you can do for single target that just do stupid damage. And in case you're in a situation where you're going to take a lot of damage, you can do a lot of damage and give yourself a very healthy shield, which is fantastic. Scarlet Witch is in a very good spot for both PvE and PvP without Transmute. I'm very excited to see what she's going to be looking like when we get Transmute, hopefully next month. At least that's my guess. I really hope we get it next month. But let's go ahead and bring up the second tier list, which is going to be the multi-target. Now, I'm just going to cover the differences here, and then we'll talk about some of the similarities. So you'll note that Spider-Man has dropped a little bit. He went from a B tier to a C tier when it comes to multi-target. I don't think he does as much damage from a multi-target standpoint as he does with single target. Black Widow, Iron Man are the same. Doctor Strange is the same. Star-Lord dropped from the S tier down to the A tier, still does stupid amounts of damage. And then the S tier is now going to Storm. I feel like we can all agree, I would hope at this point, that Storm does some crazy damage. Her specializations allow her to really double down in that electricity build and do a ton of damage. So I think she definitely holds the crown in multi-target PvE. I actually bumped up Magic a little bit here from single target from a C to a B. I do think that she has some decent multi-target or multi-target options in her toolkit, but not a ton. I do think it is worth a B rating compared to the single target, but I do think still her damage is more noticeable in longer fights than it is in shorter fights. And then last but not least, Scarlet Witch is A tier again. She is just, again, has so many different skills that she can use that do so much damage. So if you were to pick a hero if you were a new player coming to the game, who would I recommend based off this tier list if you were looking for only PvE? There's a few notable people that are basically exactly the same. And if I were to suggest, if you're going to be a completely free-to-play player in the game, I would definitely recommend Black Widow, Iron Man, or Scarlet Witch. But all three of these are fantastic in PvE and PvE. And then if you're only focusing on PvE, I would definitely recommend either Storm or Star-Lord. Storm does okay in PvP. Star-Lord does very well in PvP. But again, As a free-to-play, you're going to want the cheaper the builds, and then you might even recommend probably more Storm in that aspect, because she does really, really well with like not such great gear, whereas Star-Lord can be a little gear dependent to do as well as a Storm would do with multi-target. I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, make sure you smash that like button. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Tell me why. I would love to have a nice, healthy conversation with all of you guys about it. And I can't wait to do this again next month when hopefully we have Transmutate available on Scarlet Witch. And where is the dev notes for the next update? It should be here literally any day. Until next time, guys, lock it in.